Throughout my life, I've never had any trouble attracting in men or a romantic relationship. The trouble was, once I was in the relationship, I had trouble keeping myself. You see, in the romantic relationship, I flipped into trying to please the other person and making sure that they wouldn't go away. If you have ever chased someone that you want to pursue in a relationship, or once in the relationship, you've done anything and everything to keep that person and keep them happy and pleased, this video is for you. Hi, my name is Michelle Fondin. I'm the author of 12 published books, including Twin Flame Romance, The Journey to Unconditional Love, and Twin Flame Union, the 7 keys to a healthy twin flame journey. You can find all 12 of my published books on Amazon and 10 of my books on Ingram Spark. If you're new to this channel, I want to welcome you here to the Michelle Fondin Author vlog. This is vlog number 23. I am here with my pals, Grogu right here and Gudetama, and they keep me lighthearted and not thinking too seriously about these more serious topics that we tend to talk about on this channel. I'm here with my Grogu tumbler, with my Tino dandelion caramel nut tea. And I apologize ahead of time. I'm a little hoarse today. I have a little hoarse voice and I'm not really sure why. I think it's running the heater. There might be a lot of dust in the house. That's really why. But I want to welcome you. Let's get started talking about why chasing isn't love, why it's not love, whether you are chasing to pursue someone or whether you are still kind of in that chasing mode during your relationship. And I'd like to really talk about it from my first person perspective in doing this in romantic relationships and not really even realizing it until I met my twin flame, and the same patterns were happening in that twin flame relationship, situationship, whatever you want to happen to call it. But I noticed those patterns in me, and it was a stark realization of this is something I probably need to correct. I really believe that this pattern in me of not necessarily chasing the guy, unless they really rejected me. If I was interested in a guy growing up or whatever, and they rejected me, then I was really bent out of shape. And I thought there was something wrong with me. I was like, oh, well, I need to do this or dress this way or be this type of person, because I did not take that rejection well. And it was really my lack of self-worth and self-love. But for me, it was more of that. Once in a relationship, I would do anything and everything to try to maintain that relationship, even if it meant losing myself, really. And by the end of my marriage, I talk a lot about that, but at the end of my marriage, I really did not know who I was. I had no idea who I was as a person anymore, because I had morphed and changed so much to become a mother and a wife, and the roles that it took to become those things. So I truly lost myself in trying to maintain this relationship. In the last week's theme, we talked about your love blueprint. And because this concept of chasing, even when you're not actively chasing, right? Even when it's very subtle or it is interpreted as trying to do everything and anything to keep a relationship that you're in, even if it means changing yourself or trying to please the other person. So because this topic was so prevalent in my life, I figured that it might be prevalent in others' lives as well. And maybe it has been prevalent in your love life too. So in last week, when we talked about the love blueprint, for my love blueprint, it was during childhood, I equated watching out for other people's emotions meant love. like being careful about other people's emotions and kind of bending this way and that way to try to please the other person, to appease the other person, to make them like me better or love me better in ways that I normally wouldn't have done had I had more of my self-love and self-worth. I learned that love only stays if I perform in a certain way. If I act in a certain way, if I look in a certain way, or if I perform in a certain way. So I really learned that love equaled performance. Love equaled doing what you can so that the other person does not leave. This reminds me of something very early on in my relationship with my alcoholic loved one, when I really didn't understand the nature of alcoholism because I hadn't dated someone who was an alcoholic before. And early in the relationship, when I was really super in love with him, and I would do anything for him and anything for this relationship, I remember distinctly one thing that he asked me to do that I did not feel comfortable in doing. We were going to a concert and I had bought like some wine coolers or something. He wanted me to buy some type of alcohol to pregame it before the concert. Now, again, I didn't really drink. I would have a sip or two, or maybe if it was a wine cooler at the time, I might have one. But he really wasn't satisfied being an alcoholic. He wasn't satisfied with just having a little to drink. So I remember distinctly, we were on our way to the concert and he wanted me to stop by the ABC store, which in Virginia is the equivalent of like a liquor store. And he wanted me to buy him these like alcohol minis, like whiskey or vodka or something like that. And I thought it was utterly ridiculous, again, not knowing that he was a full-blown alcoholic. So I totally did not understand. I was like, well, we have alcohol. We had had it before we left the house. So why do you need something else? And basically he said to me, if you don't stop by the store and buy me these things, then we're done. We're over with. And I was like, wow, that's a little bit extreme. But I was also really scared because A, I loved this guy. B, we were on our way to this concert and the tickets had costed quite a lot of money. And so I bent to his demands, if you will, but it really stuck with me. And it stuck with me later as well to think about what I did to stay in this relationship, even though the demands were completely abnormal. It was abnormal for him to say that or to put those types of conditions on the relationship itself. But I bent to his will because I wanted to stay in the relationship. So that is one example of some of the things that I have done in my past to kind of chase or pursue this relationship because I didn't feel worthy to stay in it necessarily. And so I would bend to somebody else's will to do pretty much anything that they asked. So once I was in a relationship, or even if I was rejected by someone and I thought that I had to do something to make them like me better, I would oftentimes even, this was in my younger years mostly, but in my younger years, and maybe even with my twin flame as well, I did this. But I would turn on the femininity or turn on the feminine attractiveness, if you will. And I know a lot of people that do this, especially now with dating apps and texting and sexting and stuff like that. But I used to turn on the feminine sexual desire in the man to be able to lure them back in or draw them back in. Now, in retrospect, I wasn't trying to be manipulative, even though that's pretty manipulative, but I wasn't trying to be manipulative. Again, it was that low self-esteem, that low self-worth, and trying everything I could at the time to draw them in. So what I came to realize was that chasing, and the thing is that I didn't realize I had been doing this in my romantic relationships, even though the example that I just illustrated just now to you about going to the liquor store under the threat of a breakup totally ridiculous. When I think about it now, it's like, I would have been like, see ya, but I was sucked in. I was sucked into this love relationship. And in fact, later on in the relationship, oh my God, this story is coming back. Later on, much later in the relationship, when my alcoholic loved one was trying to get help for his alcoholism, and he wasn't really trying. It was like 50-50, like kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of trying. He had convinced me to go to a therapist with him to talk about our relationship problems. Now, by then, I already knew that when someone is actively drinking or using, that therapy is pointless because they're going to continue to lie even to a therapist just to hide their addiction. But I went. Again, I caved in. I went to this therapy session, or several therapy sessions. And in the first one, the therapist actually did a session with us individually to try to see what was going on in the relationship itself. And during that first session with me, I told her about this person. And I said it was love at first sight. And this is exactly how it happened. And this is when it happened, and what was happening in my life prior, what was happening in his life prior. And very astutely, because I remember this phrase, she looked at me and said, it may have been love at first sight, but you were both already starving for love. And so if you think about that phrase, starving for love, that is very much what the chasing pattern is all about. It's literally being starved for love. And when I realized that much later on, because she may have said it at the time, I don't really think it clicked until I was well into my twin flame journey years later, that sense of starving for love. So when you chase or pursue someone, when I was chasing or pursuing, even in the midst of a relationship for fear that that relationship might end, the loss, the abandonment, the lack of love, the loss of love, even in the midst of that relationship, it later transferred over to the chasing in my twin flame situationship because I had that fear of loss of love, or that starvation of needing to be loved. So really what the chasing is all about is it's not about the other person. It's not about the person that you're trying to chase, the person that you were with. It's literally an old wound surfacing to be healed. And again, I did not realize this for years and years and years and years until I was well underway on my self-love journey during my twin flame connection. And it's something that I write about in Twin Flame Romance and Twin Flame Union when I talk a little bit more about the runner-chaser dynamic. And I think I really emphasize it a lot more in the book Twin Flame Union, The 7 Keys to a Healthy Twin Flame Journey. Because by the time I had written that book, I think I had it figured out. Like I figured out that the chasing was not about the person himself. The chasing was about me feeling inadequate, that old childhood wound that had resurfaced. And it was just waiting to be healed. It was that love starvation, as that therapist so eloquently put it, that hit home, but it hurt a lot, even though I didn't really realize why it hurt at the time. But when you chase love, you are not actually running toward someone. You're running toward that parent who wasn't there for you, the parent who didn't recognize you, who did not see you, the parent who was not there for you when you wanted them to be there, or maybe didn't show up in the way that you wanted them to show up. It was your emotional needs that were unmet in previous relationships, especially the relationships as you were growing up. It's the validation that you never received, the safety you didn't feel in relationships. It's the soothing that never came from the exterior. And it was the love that you were taught to earn, just like I was taught that in order to receive love, that I had to perform in a certain way. And through my examples today, hopefully you can see that definitely played out. It was like performance, and now you can have the love. You have to be a certain way, and now you can have that love. You have to act in a certain way, and now you deserve that love. And so that is really how I was hardwired, and that is how I learned. And in fact, I remember this. Oh my God, all these things are coming up now. When I was very young, probably in my teen years, at some point, I even said to myself, I really don't think there's a man out there that would ever want to marry me. I don't think there's anybody out there that would ever want to marry me. I'm a handful, like I'm difficult. And I was just repeating all of the phrases that I had heard throughout my life, that I'm too much, I have too many demands, I'm too difficult, I'm a handful, I'm stubborn. All of those things were just milling about in my head. And like I said, I had never really any trouble getting into relationships or having a date. I was a person with dates all the time. I never lacked for dates. Me attracting in someone to date was never an issue. It was just the worry about keeping them there. That was the major issue. And so when I got pregnant with my first child, unconsciously, subconsciously, right? You never know why it happens or how it happens, but I was in college when it happened. Of course, being pregnant and having a child out of wedlock, that meant one of two things for me. It either meant that I was going to be a single mother, or it meant that the guy with whom I was pregnant would marry me. So maybe on a subconscious level, that was my way of making sure I would have a husband, right? This is in retrospect, right? In retrospect, my eldest is now 31. So this was 32 years counting the pregnancy, right? 32 years ago. But maybe that was it. Like maybe that was my way of chasing or trying to maintain the relationship that I didn't even feel that I deserved, right? Because if my younger self was like, no man's ever going to want me, then of course, subconsciously, maybe it was like, oh, well, if I get pregnant, maybe they'll have no choice then to be with me. Kind of twisted, right? We're going to heal all of this as we talk about this. And we're going to talk about it in a later episode of this theming later this week. But I really wanted to give you bits and pieces of my story. And so how you can really fully understand how chasing is not about like, I'm obsessed with this person. This is destiny. I love this person. And while the relationship may be a destined relationship, whether you're talking about a twin flame or a soulmate, or maybe even a karmic partner, while it might be destined in that way, like you have a soul contract with this person, the wound itself is probably part of that destiny too, right? Or resolving that wound, like getting to the core reason of why you feel you need to be with this person, or why you feel you're pursuing or chasing or doing anything like bending over backwards to make sure that you darn well stay in that relationship. And as I mentioned before, that in my personal wounding, that my husband was a mirror reflection of my mother. So that obviously was some wound, some major wound that I was working out as well. In the midst of my twin flame journey, probably year 2 or 3 of the twin flame journey, in the midst of it, this had been a progressive lesson of what I had been learning. I first thought that chasing was only physical. I really thought that chasing meant pursuing in some way, shape, or form, whether it was calling them periodically or often, texting them, seeing what they were doing on social media. And for some people, this did not happen with me. But for some people, it might mean like showing up at their house, doing little drive-bys, their home, or doing any other things like showing up at their work, right? So for some twin flames that I've coached, there have been instances of that type of chasing. But I didn't really understand the non-verbal and non-physical chasing, which is really more of that energetic chasing. The energetic chasing really is that you might be praying every night that your twin flame comes back to you, or your lover or your soulmate comes back to you. You might be doing affirmations and incantations incessantly and obsessively. So hear me, that is the term, right? incantations or affirmations are great to do. It's great to have a focal point, but we're talking about like that obsession of I must have them, I need them, they need to be with me, it must happen. That's the obsessive part that is chasing, even if you're not physically actively doing anything. And so it took me a long while to differentiate between those two things, to realize that even if I wasn't physically pursuing my twin flame, if energetically I was obsessing over my twin flame, that was still chasing. If my energy was projected outward toward him, at all moments of the day, at any point in time during the day or during the week or during the month, that was also chasing. That was also chasing energy. Why? Because I was placing him as my object of attention and not really taking it inward to myself to love myself more and know my self-worth, having my self-respect. And so it was really at that point, like I said, a progressive lesson in the first 2 to 3 years of my twin flame journey, where I learned that I am giving away my self-worth by pursuing or chasing in any way, shape, or form, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, energetic, or what have you. So then once I realized that I respect myself so much and I love myself so much that I'm not going to be doing this, this is silly, then the wound is appeased, then the wound has actually stopped. And when you realize that, you have an enormous sense of freedom. So I realized it's not because I love or I don't love this person or a person, right? It's not because of that. It's, do I love myself enough to realize that whether they're in my life or not in my life, it doesn't change who I am. And it doesn't change my receivability factor of love, right? Let's go back to that phrase that therapist told me, that you were both starving for love. And when you get away from that starvation phase and realize that you are loved as is and you are deserving of love as is, that wound, it tends to dissipate, and it dissipates so much that it will disappear completely. And really, that's what my upcoming book is all about too, which is called Love Me Unconditionally, a spiritual guide to self-love, that will be released in May of 2026. I know that seems really far off, but it's not that far off, guys. So I'm outlining here, this was my hugest lesson of all lessons. It was that. It was the hugest lessons of all lessons, was my deservability of love, in that I don't have to reach out, move forward, lean in, keep pursuing to receive love, that I am love and I am deserving of love. And if you can reach that point, it is an amazing point to reach. And it is amazing to love yourself so much in that way that you realize that you don't even have to chase anything, whether it's a person, place, animal, or thing, or money, or anything, that you deserve to have it because you are love. So I hope this was helpful. We're going to dig a lot deeper into the psychology of chasing in the next video for the theming of this week. But I hope this was helpful in kind of understanding my story, where I was at in this chasing theming of not feeling that I deserved love. And if you have ever felt like that throughout your life, then please put it in the comments section below. And do join me tomorrow, Tuesday, December 9th, for my Chat with the Author Q&A at 6 p.m. Pacific time. I'll be holding it now on Tuesdays, every other Tuesday, except for December. I'll be doing it on December 9th and December 16th because there's Christmas week. But other than that, I'll be doing it every other Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. You can join me and ask a question, any question based on any of the topics that I write about in my 12 published books. I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this with others who could use a little help on the romantic relationship front, on the self-love front, and maybe on the twin flame journey. I want to thank you so much for your support of my work. You can purchase one of my 12 published books. You can join a twin flame bootcamp or my meditation course, and I will see you in the next video.